time to do that as a family.
It's important that you figure out ways that you can, help to boost morale, so that everyone's not getting depressed by the fact that you're in a different area, you don't know anybody
It
really,
was all new.
you're working. I mean, you're going to work your butt off on a homestead,
Oh yeah,
Still work our butts
With-
off.
figuratively and literally.
yeah.
So you will lose some
Very.
weight.
You lose
I
a couple
did.
pounds.
Yes.
I did.
Yeah.
You will lose weight. That's normal, So I had a job at the time, still do, but I was working for a different company at that point, and I would get up, and the only way that we had internet was through our cell phone.
Yeah, he would use a SIM card from my phone and stuff to help.
We would,
do that.
right, we would use different phones, SIM cards. We tried different devices. We tried a Wi-Fi hotspot with a SIM card. We bought multiple input, multiple output,
And
the antennas.
Yeah, the antennas. was what I was
Right,
saying.
the high gain antennas. I mean, we did everything that we
Nothing
could.
really worked that well.
It was nothing that was really efficient for us at
No.
all.
For what you do, you have to have a lot of internet because
Right.
you have a lot. What you do.
So there were days that I would drive to town just so that I could either go to the library and use their internet or go to the Walmart parking lot and just sit there with my laptop just so I could work from there instead, not using their Wi-Fi, but using my phone's Wi-Fi or using my phone's internet anyways, and turning it into a Wi-Fi hotspot. But I had better reception down in town than what we do here.
Reception for us isn't very good up here.
No, it still isn't great, to be
No, it
honest.
It really isn't.
It
hasn't
really
changed much at all.
it hasn't.
Uh-uh.
It has not improved at all, to be
No.
honest. So when we first came out here, we were looking for ways to be able to function, but I would have to work between 8 and 5, Monday through Friday, East Coast time. So that was like 7 to 4, Central time. And so I would get up and, go ahead and start work 7 o'clock, and I would work until 4 o'clock. And anywhere in that time span, sometimes a little earlier, sometimes a little later. It just depended. If I had extra stuff I had to do that I was working into the evening, it really depended on the circumstances. But then, as soon as I was done for the day, whatever time that was, it was, all right, get to work. And
He was dropping trees with a chainsaw, and we was dragging and pulling and dragging and pulling and dragging and pulling
A lot
and
of cutting
raking
by day and
and
burning by night.
moving
Yes.
rocks.
Yeah.
We live in rock country.
We do.
It just grows. It rains, you have more rocks.
you grow rocks every time it rains.
Yeah.
Yes. So we were doing that for the first 2 months, almost nonstop. I mean, we still do it today, but to a lesser
It has
extent.
slowed down a lot.
When we
because,
first came here, though, we had to cut the area
Oh, yeah, from
around the camper.
We did.
Camper, we had to
Opening
go
the
like
door was
that.
Right, we had to make the bubble bigger.
Yeah, we had to
We
make
did.
it bigger, a bigger bubble.
So we would just keep pushing in one direction and keep cutting, dropping, cutting.
Ourselves.
We did.
Oh, yeah.
And
made
then we
it
would
a couple
push
times.
back behind the camper and cut. And then we push another direction and cut, and just
Lots
keep
back.
pushing more and more in every direction until we had enough area cleared out that we could move the camper to a better location,
Which
Yeah.
we did at that point.
which we did at
That
that
helped
point.
out tremendously.
It
So
did.
that was able to set up our camp a whole lot better, which made us, doing better. Now I can set the grill up where I can cook outside, and we have our picnic table we bought.
It felt more like a
things
home
like
at
that
that point.
helped out. So made it easier to cook because I'd rather cook outside than inside that camper because it got so hot. Yeah.
So we had to set all this up. We had to figure out solutions for water. So at the very beginning, we were going to the town closest to us, the Walmart there, and buying water by the gallon.
Very
Lots of it.
expensive after a while.
That gets expensive very quickly. I mean, you think
Yeah,
about,
so
you don't realize how much water you use until you're using it by the gallon.
Right.
You really realize how much
You know,
it is at that point.
Just for just basic hygiene, for cooking, and
And
cleaning.
we had to water our animals too. So we had dogs and chickens that we had to make sure they
Yes.
had water.
So all these things did not go away. So we had to figure out solutions quickly. So one of the first solutions that we figured out,
Rain catchment.
rainwater collection. So what we did was we took the awning that was on the camper and we were able to tilt it in a basic general direction so that it would run off into a 55-gallon drum that we had with a valve at the very bottom of it, a water valve that we could turn on and off and just fill up the 55-gallon. And so like one big massive rain came, and it was such a relief that we actually had more than enough water from that one rain to be able to actually, to help us to get by for a while. And then every time it rained, it would just continue to top it off more and more.
We'd have a problem with having not enough water in there.
No, at that point, we no longer had an issue with
We
water
didn't have an
problems
issue
We'd
at
have
that
to worry
point.
about it with watering the animals and stuff.
So that was a big help.
then we had a Berkey too.
We had a Berkey that we would use to purify our water as well. Absolutely. And then we finally got water actually hooked up on the property, and that was a big help.
Then we had to run a hose
Yes.
forever
We
from
did.
there to where we was at.
Yes.
And we wouldn't have the power hooked up good enough for water heater.
No, we didn't have electricity except for the generator still. So this was in March. We didn't get full-time electricity here until almost November.
Remember?
Yeah.
Mhm.
It was almost November. So from March until November, the only real power that we had
It's a generator.
was from a generator. That was it.
That
We
was
did
all we had.
no solar, just a generator. And we got through, a very, very hot July and August,
So hot.
Mhm.
which required us to get an even better generator.
Because I got sick.
Mhm.
She got sick and we had to get a better thing to run the AC in the camper.
Yeah, the generator that we had was sufficient to run power and do about 95% of what we wanted it to do.
It wasn't really good for AC running though.
That was the issue. It's like come July, August, we needed the ability of actually utilizing AC in the daytime, at least for a few hours anyway, to cool the camper off. Because, like I said, campers heat up very well when it's hot, and they cool down very well when it's cool.
Because prior to all this, we were just using fans to cool.
Yes. So we invested in a better generator and hooked it up, and we were able to use it for air conditioning, at least for a couple weeks anyways, continuously. She was sick at the time and running a very high fever, so it was necessary. It was either that or, go to a hospital, and actually stay there or something while she was recovering,
Which was expensive.
which would have been very expensive, exactly. So it made more sense to invest in the generator then under those conditions. So sometimes you have to figure out what's the right decision to make. How do you approach that? There are other options we could have
Yeah.
explored, but those were a couple of them. And we chose to go the route with the generator.
I didn't expect you pulling up from work. I was downtown, and the next thing I expected was like, what are you doing home?
Yeah, I
You know,
just
saying,
surprised her with the check. Well, here you go, honey.
It's
Here's your gift.
like, you didn't have to do that. I'm fine.
I
He
was
was like,
thinking
no,
when we got it,
no,
wasn't
no.
I?
I want
No.
to make sure
Oh,
you're
okay.
okay. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah, it was a big generator. It's 10,000 watt generator. So it was capable of easily powering everything in the camper and a lot more. But it's been an investment ever since then too.
Yeah, we've used it,
Whenever the power went out here due
Yeah.
to just some bad weather, it was
Yeah.
useful. So it has come in handy beyond that.
And also the main thing too is train everybody on your property how to
Yeah.
maintain the generators.
Right. So that was one of the things we had to figure out a solution for. Obviously, power, water, another one. So there are going to be a lot of different problems you're going to have to problem solve on your property whenever you first start homesteading. How do you deal with predator control?
Mm-hmm.
How do you deal if you're in the raw? How do you deal with power? Is it going to come from a generator? That's going to get expensive. Are you going to use solar? How are you going to implement that as your solution? Think ahead. If you're living like we were, if I had to rewind the clock about 4 years to where we were beginning this journey roughly, or planning this journey, not even beginning the journey, we were planning the journey 4 years ago to move out here. If I had to rewind the clock to then, these are some points of advice that I would give myself. Have a plan for power, have a plan for water, have an alternate plan. So my advice would be, don't invest in just one generator. I'm going to tell you, have two, truthfully. Because if you're in the raw, I'm not talking if you live close to where you can get power pretty easy. I'm saying if you're in the raw, out somewhere where power is going to be an issue, have two generators. Even if you don't run them continuously, have two.
And also how you can get some parts like a carburetor put up and stuff like that too. And
That's a good point. Have a backup supplies.
yeah, including the spark plugs that you need too. That's always, and oil.
Oil, spark plugs, carburetor kits, gas, stabilizer for your fuel. All these things are some things you want to think about ahead of time. A good chainsaw.
Oh yes.
Oh,
In
yeah.
fact, make that two. What you want, really, you want your dropping chainsaw or your felling chainsaw, which is usually going to be about an 18 or 20 inch cut chainsaw. You know, that's not a little one. You know, that's not a gigantic one either.
It's a decent size.
That's a decent size. That's something, though, that will drop most trees
Yes.
without much of a problem. I would recommend something like a steel 20 inch chainsaw. My advice. It doesn't have to be steel. It can be, you know, Echo or other brands, but
Whatever you like.
something that is really you know, powerful, and has enough of a cut to be able to drop most trees without a problem. Then you want a cutting chainsaw for doing your limbing and you're cutting up into logs, you know, sections, either long logs, short logs, burnable logs, whatever it is you want to do. Have your other chainsaw, you know, available for those issues too. That way you're not wearing yourself out trying to use your big chainsaw, just doing little limb work and things like that, which can really, you know, start to play on the arm and shoulder muscles and everything else in the back after a while. Yeah, so that's something else you want to plan for. A weed eater. Having a good weed eater around the property. You're not going to be able to use your rider, your fancy zero-turn riding mower.
No, or push
Most
more around
likely,
here
if you're in the
because
raw
of
at
rocks.
least. Yeah, rocks are a problem. So I recommend a weed eater. A good weed eater.
2 weed eaters.
Probably 2.
Or even 3.
Or even 3. Truthfully, they are really an expendable resource. You can go to Lowe's or Home Depot or Ace or Tractor Supply
Walmart
or
now.
Walmart, wherever you want to, whatever your big box or your local, you know, your local dealers, don't overlook them either. But you can go to one of these places and pick up a couple cheap weed eaters. You know, just something to be able to take care of, doing a little bit of light brush cutting, a little bit of light, you know, weed work around where you're at. It'll definitely keep you from ruining your good equipment while you are getting things, you know, kind of prepared. So these are a few things that I would recommend for you to invest in. Hand tools, you know, a good shovel, not a cheap shovel,
A good shovel.
a good shovel, a good quality rake,
Pickaxe.
good quality post hole diggers, good quality mattocks, good quality mauls, axes,
Right.
you know, right, good quality. I mean, all these things. Don't invest in the cheapest of these things. You know, otherwise you're going to be running back to town over and over and over again, replacing them.
Because they're
And I recommend good gloves.
Oh yes.
Multiple pair of gloves could too, because you're like, I've lost my glove,
how many
can't
times have
find
we
my
lost our
gloves, or you left them out in the rain and they're wet. So
It's
a
true
couple
stuff.
pairs of
It's
good
real
gloves.
stuff.
Work boots.
Yes, work boots.
Everybody needs a pair of work boots. Okay. Listen to me. You know, ladies, they're not stylish. Okay.
I think they are, but we like
they're
boots.
nice.
They're not the most stylish. Guys, you know, it's a very masculine thing to do to wear the work boots. No,
Wear them more boots.
seriously, fellas.
No Crocs and socks.
No
right?
Crocs and socks.
No.
You know, the
unless
socks
you want
with
to
the
snake
flip
bed or
flops
something.
and
Now, I'm not saying you can never wear flip flops. I'm not saying you can't even go barefoot, because there are people that do
oh,
from time to time. What I'm telling you is, if you're going to be working outside,
dropping trees.
cutting stuff up, you don't want to end up ruining your day by sitting in the ER for 6 hours while somebody staples your head or your feet or, you know, your legs or whatever
you got
else.
bit by a snake.
Or you got bit by a snake and you're having to do, you know, antibiotics or treatments or whatever.
Scorpions or whatever.
Scorpions.
Be very-
You know, right, we have
If you're
scorpions
stirring
around
up
here.
the environment,
Got
you're
your
stirring up
spiders
the
and some of it's
insects.
poisonous.
That's a good point. Whenever you start dropping stuff, you are now destabilizing the natural environment around you.
That all of the animals includes.
So you want to make sure,
Creepy crawlies to the big ones.
right? You want to make sure that you're aware of
Yeah,
of this
ticks.
going into it. Have a plan for ticks. Absolutely.
Bad
Ticks was really bad.
when we first started here.
So having some good supplies, some good, you know, medicines and things of that nature available to you, a good med kit.
Treatments.
A way of being able to handle chiggers and ticks and mosquito bites and
Yeah, mosquitoes are not fun out here either.
yeah, all of these things. You want to make sure that you have a plan in place. Flies are a big problem where we are at.
They
Yes.
are.
Having a fly control, you know, program in place from the very beginning can be an issue,
Oh, yeah.
especially if you're going to have, you know, some food that's not able to be refrigerated as best as you might normally. If you're using a cooler, you might be using a refrigerator, but maybe it's not the best. So you want to make sure that you have plans in place. Think ahead. Every problem that you think you're going to encounter, you will.
Yeah.
And all the ones you haven't thought of,
You will.
You
You
will.
will. Yeah.
okay? So every problem that you can think of reasonably, go ahead and put a plan in place for well in advance before you get onto your property. And if you're going to do like we did, we pulled the camper out here 6 months almost before we came out physically. So,
Around
it
Halloween.
was around Halloween, and
It was dry too. There was nothing in there. We had to bring everything in the pool.
well, we did bring some supplies in it.
Not much.
That's my point. Is if you're going to pull it, if you have the carrying capacity to do so, go ahead and already have it
I
pre-stocked.
think it was reasonable.
We had hand tools. We had a generator. We had a chainsaw. We had other supplies. Gas cans, things of that nature, already in the camper before we even came out here physically ourselves. So that when we did come out here as a family months later, whenever we pulled the camper or pulled the U-Haul, we were not having to also include those items that we knew we were going to need. So
When it was just me and you, but with the camper too, we went to the store and bought a chainsaw and some yard tools and a small storage building and put it up because we did a few things out here just to clear a small spot just to put the camper.
yeah, that's a good point. When we first came out here, one of our first visits, we did not know where to really buy supplies local. So we went to one of the bigger towns close to us, went to a Lowe's, and we bought a 14-inch Craftsman chainsaw, something that we could do some light cutting with. We bought the cheapest weed eater that they had, and then we bought some good quality hand tools. And why did I spend more on the hand tools? Again, because, you got to think about where your money is able to go.
And most of those tools have, if they break, they replace them, especially if it's Cobalt brand.
Exactly. So in this case, it was Lowe's, Cobalt brand stuff, some of your Craftsman brand stuff, some of your, there's a couple other brands out there that have some form of a lifetime warranty. So that was the reason why I sprung for a little bit more, expensive hand tools as opposed to just going and buying the cheapest that you could buy, because these things carried with them certain warranties and guarantees.
More bang for your buck.
And if you end up going back to these retailers later on, you can recoup that investment, even if it is a year or two later. So we did that. Meanwhile, we knew that we were going to end up leaving the chainsaw and the weed eater, and those were two of the bigger ticket items. And because we were not going to be on the property, even though the property is relatively remote, I didn't want to take the chance of someone coming along and stealing it.
Right.
I mean, if they stole, the weed eater, it wasn't even a $100 weed eater, I think, at the time.
Yeah.
The Craftsman 14-inch chainsaw was about $140 at that time. I don't know what it is today. Thanks, Joe. But anyway,
Uncle Joe.
but anyway, sorry about that.
Sorry.
So I don't know what it is today for the same thing. The hand tools were, like I said, were a little bit more. Again, it was worth the risk, I think, a little bit as far as that goes. And if we had to, we could always take the hand tools back with us whenever we left. But we chose to leave them here. We did invest
They don't
in.
fit in my little Tic Tac.
Yeah, we invested in a chain to go around the container. It was a very small Rubbermaid garden box, basically,
Yeah, we screwed
garden
it to a
shed.
tree.
Yeah, that we mounted. All right, we attached to a tree and then chained it to the tree, and
It wasn't going
Like
nowhere.
the wind moving it too, just in
Yeah.
case it decides to knock
I mean,
over.
somebody could still tore it apart and
If
took
they
what was in
really
there if they
wanted
really
to.
wanted to, but
If they have the
we
deterrent.
knew all we could do was just help to deter. That was all.
That's all we could do.
And again, it was kind of out of sight, out of mind. So some concealment was a good deterrent there too.
Yeah. reassurance.
Plus, also, whenever we first came out, too, we bought signs, no trespassing signs,
Purple paint, did you?
and purple paint. That first time we came out too, because we knew it was coming back out here. That so that people know, hey, it's not vacant no more. That people are here.